my guests just keep getting better and better. If you are new tuning in, guys, I usually feature authors, people of note. I have had a lot of people from the community in here, community leaders, politicians. Not so many politicians, but I've had a lot of a great variety of people. And you guys know that I've never hid it that I like my cannabis. I've told you that I've taken mushrooms for therapy over the years, and so this is nothing new. But today's guest is someone who is an expert in the field and someone we're going to get so much useful information from. So hang around. I promise you we got some good stuff coming up. I want to make a few announcements before we get started. A lot of people ask me what this is, and actually I've had this one for over 3 years. You probably see me wear it in the show every week. And what this is this is an ion charger. I had this one and I lost it and I thought it was gone forever, and so I bought another one. Over $300, but you know what? It has so much value. I've had it 3.5 years. I've never gotten a sniffle. I've never gotten a cold. I've never gotten any kind of at all, nothing. And it has a lot of merit, so much so that when I lost it, I went and spent $350 to buy a new one. So if you need or want or interested in these, I got to tell you, get a hold of me because they work and they really work well. The other thing I want to talk about is I started on a product in January. My wife Dee and me, we both started on this product, and it's called iHercules. The company New Extract makes this, and this is one of the newest products that cutting edge. I was on a conference call and I heard a man who had been on dialysis for 11 years. He had a serious heart trouble, and after 4 months of taking this product, he is completely diabetes free and off of his off of dialysis, and his heart blood pressure was absolutely normal after just 4 days. So man, I'm telling you, you got to find out more about this iHercules. I swear by it. I was just on the phone with someone. She was telling me I look younger and younger, and I appreciate that. She's a friend of ours, but that was just my little commercial for the day. Guys, you all know that I am a supporter of CALMA, Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors, and this is an anthology that was written. I have 2 poems in the anthology. They're $20. Reach out to me. I would love to get one of these into your hands. Short stories, essays, poetry, fantastic read. I tell you what, it's a great read. I am the author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. And those of you who have loved ones who are going through a trying time, whether it be temporary illness or terminal illness, this is a practical guide to help you to overcome and face a lot of the challenges that you'll face, things that I learned in my experience in my first wife's death and her illness, and how you can benefit from it. I promise you, it's a great and useful tool. Reach out to the station or reach out to me at info@paullane.net to get a copy of the book. Let me see, what else? Oh man, I got something to share with you before we get started. You know me, I'm a big about affirmations guy. I got an affirmation that I've been using every day, twice, 3 times a day, and I want to share it with you. I'm the luckiest guy I know. The lights are always green and everything always goes my way. I always find an open parking spot and money always finds its way into my hands because I'm just the luckiest guy I know. Take note. Rewind that later and come back and write it down, because I'm telling you, it's made a huge difference in many areas in my life. One more thing I want to point out to you is, guys, that there's new terms on Facebook that you really need to be aware of. Facebook is now saying that they, after January, reserve the right to track you and your movements even if you're logged off. And if you search a product that is on their page, then they have a right, somehow have a right to it. So if you go to their options and say, what are my options? It says you can delete Facebook. So I will be leaving Facebook, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my weekend boost page, because that's very important and I reach out to a lot of people there. I'm going to have to go somewhere else, but I do not want Facebook tracking my movements. I think it's very, very intrusive. I think it's an invasion of privacy, and I don't think you should let Facebook track you either. I'm just going to get that off my chest. So with that, I'm going to introduce my guest. Erin is a friend of mine on TikTok, and so we met through TikTok. I've probably been her friend for a year or two, and one day I came across one of her posts, and she was talking about that she's an author, and oh man, my ears perked up. And you remember Charmaine Smith, who I've had on the show 2 times. She's also an author and one of my TikTok friends. And so I reached out to her and I asked her about what her book was about, and it was right up my alley. You all know that I do a lot of mushroom therapy with a lot of my clients, and we've talked about trauma that I've helped people release and how I've used it as a wonderful tool. But I never thought of mushrooms the way I do after reading this book. This book, Modern Mushroom Medicine Made Easy, by Erin Doolittle, is going to be the topic of our conversation today. And her secondary or follow-up or support book is I Got High. Now what do I do? I love the titles of these, and I love the content even more. Erin, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Oh, you may be on mute.
I did mute. I'm so sorry. It's great to be here. Thank you. I have dogs, so I will apologize in advance if they decide to comment.
Yeah, we don't mind. We do Zoom calls all the time, so this is pretty normal.
Okay.
Erin, thank you so much for writing these books, and thank you for joining us. Oh, let me silence this, so I'm sorry.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, yes. So after we talked, I had you send me a copy of your book. And, I always thought of mushrooms as a tool to help, and I've always had it in my war chest. And I never thought of it as a being, or I never thought of it as what it really was. And it was obvious after reading your book. It's medicine.
Yep, yep.
In the beginning of your first book, you talk about a woman in Mexico, Maria Sabina.
Right, yes.
Tell me a little bit about that story. I was fascinated with this.
Maria Sabina is to me, just like the best of the best. She was a true healer from the Mazatec people, and she lived in a tiny little town in Oaxaca, Mexico, and she and her family had always been healers, and they worked with mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, to heal the sick. So Maria Sabina would hold ceremonies and heal people and help them with the mushrooms. Sometimes they would take them, sometimes she would take them. She would even say, if you need to vomit, I vomit for them. I mean, she really went deep with the mushrooms, and she gave them the name of the little spirit children of the earth, basically. And she so happened to be quite well known, and unfortunately, in some ways, there was an American journalist, Robert Gordon Wasson, who made his way down to Oaxaca, and he and his wife actually kind of scammed Maria Sabina a little bit, and they told her, oh, our son is missing, we want to come to this ceremony to help us. And Maria Sabina, being a loving, beautiful soul, said, yes, I will help you, with the understanding you won't share my name or my location, you won't share any of this with anybody. So they went, they had the ceremony, their minds were absolutely blown. They were the first Westerners that had ever participated in ceremony with Maria Sabina. She called them the blonde people, and thought nothing of it, and away they went. But unfortunately, in typical, kind of gusto American fashion, they got back to the States, and Robert Gordon Wasson ended up publishing an article. It was on the cover of Life magazine about his experience with Maria Sabina, and from that point onward, the movement, the hippies basically got very excited about this. He said, oh, I saw God at this ceremony, it changed my life, which is true of mushrooms, but unfortunately, the tiny little town was not set up to receive the thousands upon thousands of visitors who then flooded it. Most of them being, of the hippie culture. They were very disrespectful. They would pull up the mushrooms themselves. The town didn't have the facilities to house them. They just sort of took over. It became a whole issue. Eventually, the Mexican government stepped in and had them all forcibly removed. But throughout that process, Maria Sabina was briefly jailed, accused of being a drug dealer. Her house was burned down. Her son was murdered. And though she was released from prison and cleared of all charges, the damage was done. So from that point forward, she really was never able to really be herself again, and so she passed away very poor and sort of forgotten about. And so I think it's really important to know stories of hers and like hers, because these mushrooms are medicine from indigenous cultures who held and cared for this medicine for thousands upon thousands of years. And the only reason we do know about it is, unfortunately, because of Robert Gordon Wasson. So I don't approve of the way we found out. But I do think it's so important that we also share in this knowledge now, and we can respect the culture and we can respect the medicine, and hold it sacred to help us, because it is truly healing on a level that nothing else can really compete with. There's really nothing else I can think of that grows in the ground that's going to, help you get in touch with the divine inside of you and truly heal the parts of you that need it the most.
Mm-hmm.
So we thank
Oh, please.
Sabina every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was so insightful. I was really just really amazed to read about her, and just what a sad and tragic outcome. But like you say, there was a huge benefit and a movement that still persists to this day. Psilocybin mushrooms, a lot of people who are watching this are probably sitting there saying, "Oh, you evil people," or "This is such a terrible thing," and and I'm going to jump to the back of the book because I thought there was a statement there that was just as powerful as anything else, and it said, "Stop stigmatizing this." All of our lives, I remember the movie Reefer Madness. You talk about that in the book.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yes.
we've always been led to believe that plant medicine is bad and synthetic medicine is good. And,
Right.
I've done a lot of research over the years. My first wife passed away of a glioblastoma, a brain tumor. And so I went on an extensive journey of searching for how to cure her. And, I found many, many things in that. But one thing that I've realized is that plant medicine is good medicine, and it's side effect free. I love how you write. No one's ever died of marijuana. No one's ever died of mushroom overdose. You don't die. You could have an ego death, which we'll talk about. But stop stigmatizing this. Stop thinking that this is such a bad thing. I'm going to lay this out there. I was sitting there yesterday, and I was thinking about my 11-year-old granddaughter, and I was thinking, I am as old as my granddaughter when I first started smoking marijuana.
Wow.
I have spoken in front of 4,000, 5,000 people before. I've made $500 an hour. I've worked successfully for 14 years for a utility company. I remember walking into the bullpen one time, and one of the top brass said, "Of all the people here, I know Paul Lane would never smoke marijuana." And I chuckled to myself because I had just finished smoking marijuana. You know what? I was competent. I was on it. I was dependable. I was competent. And all of these things about you're lazy, you're stupid, you're dark, you're evil, those are all things that we need to shed. That's again that colonial mindset that we need to set aside because you talk about anxiety and depression, and when I first was reading the book and you say, "Yeah, I step outside and smoke a joint," and I'm like, "Yeah, me too." And I thought about it, and I'm like, I'm not going to be embarrassed about this.
Good.
And so this was so reassuring to read. I love that part about it. Um, I had never experienced journaling as a part of my experience, and with this, before we did let me back up. Knowing that you were coming on the show, my wife and I decided to take a dose of mushrooms a couple of days ago. And she took a microdose, and I took what was Pinacendi, and I took a little over 2 grams. And oh man, I'm telling you, journaling made so much difference. And having this information at hand, knowing the medicinal value, and that it was really the children that I was experiencing, it heightened and enlightened my experience so much. And I mean, I just told you a little bit ago on the phone, I love your book. I think it needs to be anyone who is having any kind of trauma, anyone who's having any kind of anxiety, depression, PTSD, addiction, all of those things, people who have had experiences with mushrooms have had experience with success. How did you, I mean, you did a lot of research to come up with this book. I mean, I was reading, in the beginning it talks about all your credits and all your experiences, and your childhood had something to do with how you ended up being in this position. Yes?
Yeah, I think so.
How did you come upon the idea of writing this book? How did it just come to you, or did you just say, how?
Somebody suggested to me that I should because I've been sort of teaching a psilocybin 101 class where I go and I present to a group of 5 or 10 people and I have a whole PowerPoint. And someone said, why don't you just make this a book so that, yes, people will come to your events, but they also should, have this information at their fingertips. So I sat down and I really thought about like, what are the most important things for people to know? What are the questions that I get asked the most? About this stuff and how can I put it into one cohesive little thing. I purposely made the modern mushroom medicine book really short,
Mm-hmm.
really easy to follow. It's very frank, it's very simple. I didn't want to overwhelm people, but I wanted them to know some of the depth of this subject. So that's why I include Maria Sabina and different talking about trauma and anxiety and depression, just trying to help destigmatize it and help people be aware that you're carrying this stigma inside of you. So you just need to know that it's there, so that you
Yes.
can confront it and tell it to step away. I don't need this anymore because what I'm doing is medicinal. I've been a trauma therapist, a marriage and family therapist specializing in PTSD for 20 years. I'm at the point where there is nothing I can do to help my patients more than teach them about mushrooms, and they can do about 20 years of therapy in about 4 or 5 hours. I can't, I support that. I am
Mm-hmm.
all for that. I don't think people need to sit on a couch and suffer
Mm-hmm.
for decades telling the story over and over and over again. They need to go inside, and the mushrooms help them do that and allow those connections to occur. And we can see it in MRI scans and imaging. If you look at the brain scan, there's pictures in the book of the brain
Oh yeah.
scanned before. Yeah, before, sure, there's lots of connections, okay, but after they take the psilocybin, you can see connections that did not even exist
Oh man.
before that form. So once people know that, I can say this is a neuroplasticity issue that we can visualize, we can see.
I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Yes,
I, yeah,
the brain
so
activity.
important, important stuff.
Yes. You know, there was so many things that came to me and are still coming to me. I mean, you talked about when you have an experience with mushrooms, you will have insights for days and weeks later. Um,
Yes.
Yesterday, well, this was day before yesterday we did it, and I let something out yesterday that I've been holding in for 50 years. I unleashed on my biological father, and I mean, he's been dead for more than a dozen years, and I didn't meet him till I was adult. But I let out so much vulgarity and so much rage and so much bitterness and anger and resentment that had built up in me since I was 14 years old.
Ouch.
And
Yeah.
when I was done, Aaron, I'm telling you, um, I just felt like there was, I was free.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And at first I didn't even attribute it to that experience. And then I thought about your book and I thought about, oh yeah. So, I mean, it's been helpful in so many ways. Um, I took, I journaled as I did it. And I mean, I got 2 pages front and back. And I mean, I, it made it
Yes.
so much better. Um,
Awesome.
Tell me a little bit about how did you come up with that? Did you just discover that, or how did it come upon to journal during your experience?
For me, I've always been a writer. That is my favorite form of expression. And it is also the most cost effective
Mm.
form of therapy you can ever do. Everyone can afford a piece of paper and a pen. And it's important to write down the things that come up because I've learned that, being a therapist, people tend to forget what the heck we talked about. We have our session and it's all deep and wonderful, but then they have to drive home and they have to stop at the grocery store, pick up the kids, and they lose a lot. I've started having my patients like take a few notes before you leave, even take a voice memo to listen to later, and when you have the time, really kind of dive into it a little bit more and dig out those parts. When we write, we're activating both sides of our brain, so everything is getting involved. When we talk, when we're up in this alpha state, the two sides of the brain really don't have a connection, and there's no way we're going to reach the subconscious.
Mm.
So when you journal, you're tapping into different parts of your brain and your consciousness. And there are people out there that absolutely swear by it. There are people out there that absolutely hate it. If you do find there's other ways, but I really have never stumbled across anything simpler than that. I like to keep things really simple. I don't want people to feel like I have to spend hundreds of dollars and jump through a million hoops.
Hmm.
You don't. You
Nope.
don't.
Yeah, I love that comparison. You talked about, spending $200 a session for 15 minutes, and he asked you the same question they asked just the last session. And it's like, I was treated for PTSD at the VA for about, 10 years, 8 years. And I had a guest on my show who was a shaman, and she prescribed me some medicine. And it was Molly and LSD and 3 grams of mushrooms. And I did it about 4 years ago, and it was life altering for me.
Yep. Yep.
And it truly was medicine, and it was a prescription for healing. And the experience I had, I mean, I'm 65 years old, and most people would think that's pretty old for doing this stuff, but I'm telling you, there's no age limit for this.
No, definitely not.
What ages do you typically see clients? Are they pretty wide ranging, or is it?
It is pretty wide ranging. I have people, in their 20s. I see a lot of older, like college students, all the way up to people in their 50s and 60s.
Mhm.
And the older ones have been carrying this baggage
Oh.
for so long. Oh my God.
Hmm.
They really need it. And the senior citizens there are fastest growing consumers of cannabis.
Hmm.
You have to give them credit because you're actually a lot more open minded than you get credit for.
Yep.
And if you've been carrying this for decades, then you're pretty ready to let it go. So when
Yes.
that comes up, oh my goodness, does that feel better? And you get to just enjoy the fruits of that labor. You don't have to do it over and over again.
No, it doesn't. It could be a one-time
That's
thing
it.
because you get that much out of it.
Oh,
Yep.
right, right. So I mean, there's no risk of addiction. This is about harm reduction and quality of life. With mushrooms, if you try to do them too much, they just don't work. So, I mean, the risk is so low. It's really like a why not? Why not try it? What's the worst that could happen? Maybe my stomach will get upset. Maybe I'll cry my eyes out for a few hours.
Hmm.
But even when that happens, you feel a lot better because you needed to do that.
Yep. I've taken 3 people who were over 70 years old last year, and I've had my youngest guest was 24 last year, and so I think that there's just no age that's a right time to do it. Anytime that you feel that you want to address or remove um, bad habits, traits, trauma, whether it's PTSD or whether it's addiction. I mean, literally, if you write out a clear, or you don't even have to write it out, but if you have a clear mission statement or an intention statement before you start, and you are cognizant of that during the experience, the medicine brings it out of you. Like you said in the book, I love the way you put that. The medicine will show you the way. And it's like, I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with the book of Carlos Castaneda, A Yaqui Way of Learning. I discovered that book when I was 14 years old, and I was already into psychedelics by then. So I found a place to find mescaline, you know, peyote cactus, and I even at 14, I was so fortunate that I was able to see this, that I never took it to get high. I took it sacredly, and as I think back on my life, and I think, I've been interested in plant medicine all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right, but you weren't allowed to be, right? They gave you
oh
a hard
no,
time about that.
oh no. I for the from 1997 to 2008, I was in a very rigid, religious lifestyle, and it was by my choice. But I mean, I quit smoking cannabis, I quit drinking alcohol, I never did any, I hadn't done any psychedelics since I was, in the army. But after my first wife got sick, I started doing, cannabis again. And it was so cathartic to be able to, I don't know if it's the motion of lighting the joint, or if it's not just the high. It really is the experience, the feeling that you get, the relaxation, I don't know, the release of inhibitions. I don't know. But yes, I mean, there's so much merit to everything that you said in there. It was great.
Thank
You talked about and this hit my wife so right, well, actually both of us right between the eyes, because every time we've done them, she gets sick, and you know, I would always try to, you know, comfort her and help her get through it, but I never understood that throwing up or having to go poop is not bad. That it's actually a very positive experience within the experience, because you have that emotional trauma that you're just literally throwing up, and seeing that, oh man, I mean it. She, like I say, she did a microdose this time, but it made it so much less frightening for her, and it gave her so much more confidence that, you know, even when we were done, she says, "Man, that was so wonderful."
Oh.
I gotta share this. This is so I can't wipe the smile off my face. Um,
I love this. I love it.
you know, my wife and I, we always make a habit of doing 20-second hugs throughout the day. Um, but we were sitting there, and we were sitting on the couch, and I said, let's hug, you know. And so we did a side hug, and we were hugging each other, and I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, the lines between us disappeared, and I couldn't tell where I ended and she started. And it's like, oh, I'm there. I've never been at the level where I was intermingled with another soul like this. And I really believe it was because of the insight that I had gained from this. You know, my perspective of it changed. It made it. My respect for it, it's elevated to a point that I truly view this as a sacred medicine. Um, we're seeing more and more states decriminalize psilocybin. Colorado is one that has decriminalized it, although, you know, like cannabis, it is federally against the law. But more and more people are starting to realize the benefit of it, you know. When it's used in a way that is therapeutic, it has untold benefits, I think. One of the things, I've highlighted quite a few points in here, so I'm a highlighter. I read with a red, yellow highlighter.
Me too. I underline. I make little stars, little smiley faces.
Oh, yes. No matter how weird or fucked up you may think you are, or what you experience may be. Oh, okay, I'm going to read back to the beginning. Here's the thing about therapy in general. Yes, it's normal. Whatever comes up, however it presents, is normal and quite possibly necessary, no matter how weird or fucked up you may think you are or what your experience to be. So sometimes when I would be going through an experience in, you know, in years past, I would be real troubled about things, or I would have fears that were unfounded, and I didn't accept them as part of the experience, not realizing that this is purging, you know. And reading this just makes it, I gave myself permission to, no matter if I had that rage that I had yesterday or whether I was in euphoria, it was all okay. So that was, that was a highlight from my experience. No specific baseline to determine what is universally normal. There's no specific definition of effed up. Oh man, get your creative juices flowing. Oh, I did mine at 10:30 in the morning, and at 3:30 in the afternoon, I was just feeling on top of the world, and I went and I made some banana nut bread that we ate, and it was so amazing. And it wasn't because I was on psilocybin when I made it, but I don't know, something about the love I put into it, the experience I was having, it enhanced it. I brought some for Henry so he can enjoy. There's no mushrooms in that, Henry. But I had an experience that I wanted to share with you. We were sitting there, and we as the book said, we did an empty stomach. We did our things in the morning and on an empty stomach. And at about 2 o'clock, we decided that we were hungry, and so she got some round corn chips and put some cheese on them and jalapeno peppers, and she put them in the oven and she melted it, and we got it. And I took a bite of this, and all of a sudden I could taste with my teeth. I could see with my teeth and taste with my eyes. I'm not exaggerating. I had senses I never knew were there. And with each bite, it was deeper. It was like I was in an explosive situation. It was like, like I say, there's no definition. And then I took a chip and I bit into it, and I saw my grandmother's 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 grandmother there. And I heard the words, though you don't know our names, we know your name. Uh, I have a lump in my throat right now, Aaron, because
I believe it.
it was enlightening is not even the word. It was, I feel like I have come to a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of self-love, a higher of love for the world. I mean it. I just feel it was just the greatest experience.
So it does. It opens up all the chakras, opens you up to things that we can't see or touch or feel normally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's life changing.
Yes.
Like you're a caregiver, I'm a caregiver. When stuff comes up for me, I tend to lock down all my emotions really tightly because I have to take care of everybody else. But then when I need to grieve or I need to feel something, it can be intimidating or hard or difficult to get to. So I've definitely used the mushrooms to help me grieve. My dad passed away very quickly.
Oh,
In
that was
that
a great
moment,
story too.
yeah, I mean, I was there at the hospital as it happened, and we're making all the arrangements and doing all the things. And by the time, the ceremonies and stuff are over and the people have gone home, I couldn't get to where I needed to go. So I found, I took I like about 7 grams to really open everything up, and that's just me. Don't feel like you have to do that. But I literally finally, I heard my dad. I heard my dad tell me he was proud of me. I heard my dad tell me
Mm.
about a relationship I was in, literally say, he's a great guy, but you don't have to take care of him forever. And that set me free, like
Wow.
nothing else could have.
Wow.
Um, and I'm grateful to that experience, and I will never forget it. And I
Mm.
felt closer to my dad's spirit ever since. That just really to me, that's all I needed was
Mm.
I needed to get there. I needed to feel it, and they lovingly guided me that way. The tears flowed in a loving, really just compassionate way. I felt like I was being held by the mushroom spirits that you're okay.
Mm.
It's your time now. We're here for you. And I wish that for anyone who's been a caretaker or a caregiver and really had to take care of the world, and then we have to take care of ourselves and we go, I don't know how to do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One year in a caretaker's life is equivalent to 6 years of wear on your body. So, I mean, it's not uncommon for the caretaker or caregiver to die before their loved one, and so self-care is so critical. And especially, I mean, when you're going through caring for someone who is terminally ill, you are traumatized every day. In my book, I talk about anticipatory grief and how every day I would experience my wife's death and how traumatizing that was. And then she would go through this roller coaster where she wouldn't eat for a week, and then she'd wake up and say, I'm hungry. And it's like she couldn't even speak. And she would say, I'm hungry. And I mean, it was so traumatizing. And, after 22 months and 11 days of taking care of her, I was so exhausted. I predicted I'd be dead in 6 months. And if I hadn't taken care of myself, I might have been. And I have to attribute a lot of my my self-care at that time. I wasn't doing any mushrooms or anything, but at that time, cannabis was my friend. And my mom used to call it a crutch, and I said, well, I like crutches.
Right. Yeah.
My mom hated marijuana, and it was, she had that same stigma upon her too. And so, it's never, I don't consider it a crutch. Like you said, when you have a little anxiety or a little stress, or you just want to relax. I love how you compare it to alcohol and drinking and driving and the deadly effects of alcohol, and they call it spirits for a reason. Not in the book, but that was my interjection there. But I mean, when you compare the effects of alcohol to cannabis or mushrooms, I mean, you're talking about two completely different ends of the spectrum. So that it gives so much merit to the thought of plant medicine being the idea. So you have this section, chapter 3, get your creative juices flowing, and there were so many ideas. Haiku. I used to write haiku, and I haven't done it, and I didn't do it in this exercise, but I promise you, when I get home, I'm gonna do some haiku because I love poetry. I write quite a few poems too. Um, what is haiku and how does that benefit you?
The haiku is, it's a Japanese structure of a poem structure where it's based on syllables. So the first line is 5 syllables, the second line is 7, the third line is 5, and that's it. That's the end of the poem. You don't have to write an epic long saga.
Mm.
And it really helps me kind of like gather my thoughts and put them in like these little bites that I can take and slow my brain down. I have a lot of, racing thoughts. Anxiety gives me a lot of racing thoughts. And so if I do a haiku and I say, okay, we only have 5 syllables to explain this feeling and 7 syllables to explain that one, um, you really have to think about it and you have to choose your words really carefully. I believe deeply in the power of words in the field of neurolinguistics. We talk about how every single word that we use has a vibration attached to it that
Mm-hmm.
affects us emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
So, picking and choosing and finding just the right words that feel good to you, it's like as satisfying as putting a puzzle together.
It's
Um, you
satisfying. That's the
know,
word.
yeah, I love the click, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
hard and it can be kind of a pain, but then you figure it out, or you tweak it, you change it, and it comes out to be maybe something you didn't even expect because
Yeah.
you're using both sides of the brain, so you can still surprise yourself. But just using this little poem that they teach kids, gosh, I feel like I definitely remember doing this in high school and loving it. Um, and so I think poetry is a beautiful, powerful way to express yourself, and
Mm.
doing it simply. People think, oh, I have to rhyme. Oh, what about the iambic pentameter and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't have to be Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Just have fun with it, play with it.
Yep.
And I think haiku is very playful.
Oh, it is. I wrote haiku one time, but I didn't follow the rules. But I I made it so it didn't rhyme and it kind of looked like it flowed and seeing the guide and direction I think is so, like you say, satisfying. I'm going to read you this one that you had written. 5 minutes it took her to read this guy to write this down, guys. Mushroom like the dark, they are bringers of the light. Self-contained magic. To help myself get clear on a goal, I came up with this one. Way too much to do. What does my spirit need now? To the woods we go.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so, so concise and yet so much. I love how you would delve into clarity and intention and how important that is. Um, before I forget, I want to talk about dosing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've always worried about taking too much mushroom when we take it. And so what I did was I ground mine up and put it in capsules. I have a little capsule tool and I ground it up, and as I was grinding it, I talked to the mushroom as a
Yeah.
guide. And it added so much to the experience that when I ate it, it's like when I plant my marijuana seeds, I put them in my mouth for 7 seconds before I plant them. And
Wow.
and so your DNA is embedded in the plant, whether it's tomatoes or whatever it is. So I learned that recently. So
Super.
um, there's just no words to describe it because it's beyond description to feel the feelings that you gain and the insights that you see. And like I say, man, get rid of that stigma because it's not even real. We're running short. I mean, I knew this was going to be a fast hour. Um, the second book is Now I Got High. What do I do? And I really appreciate how you spend a lot of time talking about cannabis. And I mean, you talk about they can cure cancer with cannabis, they can cure seizures with cannabis, they can cure depression and anxiety and so many other things, and yet it's a federally outlawed drug, and it is racist. It is controlling and manipulative, and there is some economic side to it because it was a threat to the textiles industry, the clothing industry, the alcohol industry, the medicine industry, the wood industry, and everything, and the automobile industry, the fuel industry. And I talk often about on the show about how we have cannabinoid receptors all throughout our body. No other plant receptor.
Nope. But that one.
Isn't that an odd truth? And so, I mean, if I have cannabinoid receptors, I'm gonna tingle them. I like to sting. I'm not ashamed of it, guys. I'm not. Um, when you read through this book, There are so many points. I mean, like there are bigger things in the spiritual realm. We can tap into them once we know they exist. The child spirits of the psychedelic realm speak to the journeyer and guide them to a new knowledge about themselves and the universe. I had an experience. I mean, I've always had cool experiences, you know, with my mushroom experiences, but becoming one with everything was something that happened at a different level for me. Um, like I was saying, when I was touching my wife, and all of a sudden our division separated, and I mean, it disappeared, and we became one. And you know, as I was eating those chips I was talking about earlier, this presence that was beyond physical happened upon me, and I could see myself in another time dimension.
Yeah.
Literally, when it talks about getting in touch with the universe and yourself, that is exactly what I experienced. Um, if somebody didn't take mushrooms, would this book benefit them?
Yeah, I think so,
Absolutely.
really. I mean, you can integrate, any kind of spiritual experience or, work through any kind of issue through with the book, but it's definitely trying to help people feel like they're not doing anything wrong if they're
Yes.
using cannabis or mushrooms, because we just carry that stigma around and that shame, and it really, I'm trying to help people let go of that.
Yes. Yes. Aaron, I know there's people out there who want to get this book. How can they get your book?
They can hop right on Amazon. I think it's actually still available through Kindle Unlimited. It might be free. The second. So yeah, Amazon is the quickest, easiest way to go. It's what I use to self-publish, and I tell people all the time, you can make your dream come true. You can self-publish. It's actually very doable.
Mm-hmm.
And then just click it, and then it just comes to your house, and there you go. And I'm happy to like connect with people if they have questions or they need more support. They can reach out to me through email or TikTok or Instagram, or maybe not Facebook for much longer if they're going to be stalking me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I'm a very like accessible kind of person, and I'm happy to like consult with people, and help them, answer questions, whatever it may be, because yeah, I've tried to make all of this as easy to attain as possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's worth it. I do believe that whether you take cannabis or whether you don't, whether you're closed-minded or open-minded to it, educate yourself. You know, when a tree stops growing, when it dies, what's the difference between you and a tree? Keep growing. Be green. When you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you are rotten. Man,
Right.
um, I was overwhelmed when I first started doing this show because having to read these books, some of them 360 pages, and um, I was truly overwhelmed. But man, the more I read, the more insights I got, the more I was able to connect with people who have written so many wondrous treasures and be able to share them with you guys here. It makes everything that I do worth it, because that's my mission, is to educate, to open people's eyes, to help people to become the best you can be.